Thank you for joining us. I'm Heidi Cloutier.
And I'm Karen Robbie. We are trainers with the Northeast PBIS Network and Massachusetts PBIS Academy.
Today we'll be discussing how to develop a continuum for responding to concerning behavior. The content for this module was developed by the Northeast Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports Network and the Center for Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. This is a great visual that I love by PBIS Apps in Design, or I'm sorry, Teach by Design, that demonstrates the use of consistent procedures and how it can help schools have reliable data, which results in improved outcomes. This resource is hyperlinked so that you can share this with your staff to conceptualize how to develop effective response strategies for concerning behavior. When we use the same process and agreed upon behavior definitions, collect consistent, reliable data, we're better equipped to intervene sooner and improve outcomes for students.
Three important components of organizing building and district responses to concerning behavior have been addressed through this module series. In module 1, we talked about clearly defining behaviors so that we can have good communication with staff about concerning behavior and which ones are covered and managed by staff versus administrators or behavior support teams. In the second one, we talked about how to develop a flow chart so everyone knows the difference between those different types of behaviors as well as the protocols and procedures to follow. And in this module, we're going to discuss how to create a consistent behavior or discipline referral form to track behavior data. We'll walk you through how to do that and ensure that staff are consistently collecting behavior data and using it to monitor and make improvements in your school.
Great. So behavior errors are going to happen, and we want to ensure that we have consistent responses and a way to track information about these behaviors so that we can determine where we need to make improvements. Your team will need to determine what information is tracked, the process for collecting and analyzing and storing this data.
Yeah, because the school teams, like I said, are going to use that data from the referral forms to progress monitor and make evaluation decisions about school improvements.
Exactly, but this data is only useful if it's accurate and reliable. So let's look at some guidelines for developing your own referral form. All right, so we always want to start with the why, right? What is the rationale for using a behavior referral form? The process needs to be clear to all staff and provide explicit instruction on the purpose of the referral form, how to complete it, and what to expect from in terms of follow-through. Why do we even need office discipline referrals or behavior referral forms, right? It provides the administrators or your behavior support teams a starting point for understanding information that's relevant to the behavior infraction. And it helps us establish and document patterns of behaviors. It also allows us to have a system in place that can really guide the process and ensure that every student is being treated fairly and that we are using the same process. And it prompts staff to assess prior strategies that they've implemented on their own and to attempt how they improved that behavior or tried to improve that behavior. When we look at the how are we implementing? Many schools are using paper forms, but one attractive option, especially during distance learning, is paperless referral. So the school-wide information system is commonly used by schools for tracking behavior referrals, and they have an easy way of enabling paperless referrals. But your school can utilize paperless referrals or use a combination system. We just want to make sure that it includes all those required fields that we talked about and ensures timeframes for following through with those referrals.
Great. Because that's a really common complaint that we hear about with ODR forms is that staff feel like they complete them, but then they never hear back about what happened with them. So it's really important that teams along with their administrators, develop a clear and transparent process and a system to help support that. It might be as simple as an email that gets sent to the person who writes up the referral, and just letting them know what the outcome was from that. It's also really important to regularly share the data from the referrals with staff so that they can celebrate the successes, they can be a part of problem solving, and they get to see what the outcome of their work is. Also, make sure that the referral form includes factual, objective information about what happened, the rationale for the behavior, and clearly delineates a procedure for how to document the behavior.
Excellent. So it's important to remember that an office discipline referral is just one way of documenting information about the behavior and the adult responses. It's just one piece of information that can be used by your team to make decisions about the best course of action for making improvements.
Right. A few things to remember that it is not a punishment for the students. We don't want to say things like, you continue doing this, I'm going to write you up, or this behavior is going into your record, right? It's also not a reflection of the staff members' skills or capacity for supporting student behavior. And really importantly, it is not going to change or correct the behavior. So just really stress to staff that this is a data point and only that.
Great point. So when we look at critical elements on the referral form to include, most of them are pretty straightforward, but there are a couple that staff pretty consistently get hung up on. So let's look at those. So the first one is time of incident. And we want to make sure that the time of incident is the time that the behavior infraction actually occurred. And what we often see is that staff are putting in the time that they're filling out the referral form. So take a look at your data and make sure that you're frequently reminding staff about that. And then the other piece is around referring staff. We want to make sure we're not handing referral forms off to other staff that didn't witness or weren't involved in the incident, and that we're actually having individuals who witnessed so that they can accurately complete those forms. And then lastly, the sticking point that comes up probably most frequently is around perceived motivation. And in fact, some schools even leave this off of their referral forms. But it's a really critical piece of information to help your teams problem solve effective, efficient solutions. Otherwise, we can just start throwing solutions at the issue. If you want more information on perceived motivation and function of behavior, Karen did a great function of behavior module that you can access in those Northeast PBIS online training modules. So let's look at a few examples. It's important to make sure that these forms are efficient and easy to use, otherwise staff won't consistently use them, right? So let's look at this one. And all of these examples can be found in Appendix K of your Getting Started workbook. So I like this one because it's clean, it has the check boxes, it's going to be super fast for staff to fill out, and that's really key. It has all of those critical fields that we talked about on the previous slide, and I'll have Karen walk you through a couple more examples.
Yeah, so this one is a great example of one that can be used in a couple of different ways. One is if you are a classroom teacher and rather than having to, every time you have a student who is engaged in a similar type of ongoing behaviors, you can focus in on one particular student and document it all in one place in a really simple and quick way. The other one, the next one, is one that can be used if you are in a setting like, for example, in the playground or the cafeteria or other places like that, where you want to have multiple on one page so that you can just keep track of it for different students.
Good point. So another piece that I love on the referral forms is when schools include the behavior definitions on the back of the form to remind folks of what those behavior definitions are. We want to remember that the office discipline referral form helps to ensure that we have reliable, accurate data that can be used to problem solve with our teams and improve the behavior. That's really the point of collecting this in the first place, right? And one of the most powerful ways that you can get staff to use procedures is sharing the data back with them. So think about how you can review key features of implementing procedures, reminding staff to pause and ensure that you have systems in place to support implementation. And always remember in this process to consider the culture and context. That is so important.
And so as we start wrapping up here, here are just some great examples of questions for you to spend some time thinking about. If you have access with the rest of your team, maybe have a collaborative discussion around some of these pieces. And this is getting into that real actionable step now that you've gained some knowledge. How are we going to make this work in our school? And certainly, once you've identified some of those steps, you want to add them onto your action plan.
Great, and you can find this activity in section 2B, part 7 of the Getting Started steps in your workbook. And if you have additional questions or concerns, please reach out to your Massachusetts PBIS Academy trainers. And thanks so much for watching. Please be sure to check out some of these additional resources as well as the additional modules that are online. Thanks again for doing this great work.
Thank you, everyone.